when was sort of the first time you found yourself saying comedy, that this is what I'm going to do?
I was fascinated by it as a kid. I remember, like, my mom would always watch The Tonight Show. She was a night owl. And so my door would be cracked open just a little bit in the bedroom, but I could hear it. I was never interested in the actors or the musician. But if it was a comedian, I would get out of bed and I would go look through, where the hinges were. I could look through there and see the TV. And I remember watching Flip Wilson and, all Bob Hope and all those. Yeah. I was just fascinated. And then, so as I got a little older, I'd save up my money and I would buy comedy records, like, Bob Newhart or whatever. I would just memorize them and I'd go to school and do them. Like a lot of people, I get out of high school. I have no idea what I want to do for a living. I'm working in a grocery store, going to college, living at home because I had no money, flunk out of college. I think one of my dad's friends felt bad for me and he got me a job working dispatch at IBM. And I was the guy. Every workplace has this person, male or female, that's in the break room making everybody laugh. I'd be the guy in the break room doing the impersonation of the boss, and you'd turn around and the boss would be standing in the door. That was me. But I worked with a bunch of guys that used to go to the local comedy club, and they kept going, Foxworthy, you're funnier than these people. You need to try this. And I guess I didn't do it fast enough. So they entered me in a contest, not an amateur night, a contest called the Great Southeastern Laugh Off for working comics. And I'm like, oh, crap. And I went home and I wrote like 5 minutes about my family. And I won the contest. My first night on stage, I won. And I was a nervous wreck, but I remember thinking a minute into it, I'm like, oh, my God, this is what I want to do. And I quit my job at IBM. My mother, her first thing when I told her I quit my job, she's like, are you on the dope? Whatever the dope, the dope, whatever the dope is. And I said, no. I said, I think I can do this. I love it. I think I can do this. And literally 5 years later, I'm on Johnny Carson. And the same mother is going, you wasted all those years at IBM. And I'm like, oh, for God's sakes, Mom,
Did I hear that night that you did that you essentially committed your life to comedy, you also met your wife?
Met my wife was acting, and she had just done a thing with a comedian. And so a bunch of people from that show came down to root for this guy who was also in the contest. And so when I came off stage, she came up to me and went, wow, you're really funny. And I was so nervous that I spilled my drink literally right down the front of her sweater and her pants.
What kind of a drink was it? Was it a Bloody Mary?
No, I think it was a 7 and 7 back then. The official redneck cocktail.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I said, now you'll never go out with me. And she laughed and she goes, you didn't even ask me. And that was a Tuesday, and we went out on a Saturday, and I moved in with her on a Monday, and that was 38 years ago.
Holy smokes. Yeah. That is very much so against the odds. I'm not...
There's no way it should have worked, just no way. But she was the only person in my life, because she was creative and she was acting. She was the only person that was saying to me, you should quit your job. She said, you're so creative. And if you don't do something creative, you're going to have a miserable life. Everybody else was going, you can't quit IBM to go be a comic, and she was the one person breathing that into me. And she would sit in the back of the room with a notepad and she'd go, this worked good. This, you need to, that's not funny. Stop doing that. And she eventually quit acting and took a job selling milk so we didn't starve to death. Because that first year I found the little, like the little calendar books. I found that one day cleaning out my drawer from my first year on the road. I did 406 shows. I made $8,300.
Wow.
for the year.
Wow. I'm bad at division, but that doesn't sound like a lot of money per night.
I think it's like $20 a show.
Wow.
But so we would have starved to death if she hadn't have done that. But she just believed in me. She's like, you can do this. You can, it was her, because I'd gotten to the point even 4 or 5 years later where I was headlining all over the country, but I couldn't get on TV. I would send tapes to the Tonight Show and they wouldn't even open them. They just mail them back. And she said, it's because you live in Smyrna, Georgia, which was a suburb. She said, if we don't go to LA, you're never going to know if you could do this or not. And we were like the Clampetts. We loaded up a U-Haul and moved to LA. And I think we'd been there 2 weeks. And I was doing a set in the Improv. And the talent coordinator from the Tonight Show was in the audience. And he followed me out into the lobby. And he said, how come you haven't done the Tonight Show? And I said, because you don't open my tapes. You just mail them back. And 2 weeks later, I was on the Tonight Show.
Are you a guy who, when you're walking around and you think of a bit, do you stop the world to write that bit down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only because I know through experience that I won't remember it. Mm-hmm. And so that's my first advice when anybody wants to talk to me about being a comic. I said, write your thoughts down and you write them down as soon as you think them. Yeah. Because so many times I've been thinking something and thought, I'll write it down when I get to the mall. And then you get to the mall and you're like, crap, what was I thinking? I can't remember it. To the point, like I have a pad next to my bed with a pen on it. Yes. Because so many times I think of something after I turn the light out and I'm trying to go to sleep and I'll think of something. And I've literally learned to write in the dark. I'll just reach over there, take the pen and scribble a few words on the pad in the dark. But it's legible enough. I can read it the next morning. Yeah. I keep a pad on my bathroom counter because I bet you 70% of the stuff I've ever wrote, I thought of in the shower.
Yep. Shower.
I come out of the shower and I look at my wife and I go, hey, is this funny? And to the point, great story. So one night,
I'm just that the visual of you walking out of the shower and saying, hey, is this funny? This is kind of funny.
It really hurts my feelings when she says yes before I say anything. But so one night I got to meet Bruce Springsteen and it was just the two of us and we're sitting there talking. And I'm fascinated with the writing process. And I said, how as a 20-year-old, were you able to write lyrics like young girl sitting on the hood of a Dodge drinking warm beer in the soft summer rain? I said, nobody 20 should be able to write that. And he was like, I just wanted to write stuff I wasn't going to be embarrassed singing 30 years down the road. And I said, so where do you write? Where does it come up? And he's like, nah, I write most stuff in the shower. And I was like, oh, I write most stuff in the shower too.